Good evening and welcome to the City of Woodstock's virtual public planning meeting for Monday, June 14th, 2021. Tonight's meeting is an open public meeting as required by the Planning Act. This meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube channel, and a recording of the meeting will also be posted afterwards on the city's website. An agenda of the meeting can be found on the Agendas, Meetings, and Minutes page on the city's website under the Inside City Hall heading on the cityofwoodstock.ca homepage. Present here tonight are members of City Council, Deputy City Clerk Alicia Dijuk, City Engineer, Building Official Craig Wallace, and Oxford County Senior Planner Andrea Hackler. This public planning meeting is for information and discussion purposes only. There are no decisions made this evening. Final decisions on these will appear on Thursday's agenda. Thursday's agenda for June the 17th at 1:30 p.m. If you wish to address council at that meeting as well as tonight or just on Thursday, you must submit a delegation form to the city clerk no later than 2 p.m. tomorrow, that being Tuesday. Delegation form is also available on the city website. Due to the nature of a virtual meeting, the public has been asked to submit a request to speak in advance to allow for pre-meeting tests with the IT department. Those wishing to make a presentation will join the meeting via Zoom or just by telephone if they want to as well, to be participating in the meeting to ask and answer questions. When recognized by the chair to speak, you must provide your name and address for the public record before giving comments. Only the applicant or people who provide oral or written comments regarding the application are entitled to appeal council's decision to the local planning appeal tribunal. Please keep your comments to planning matters only and avoid repeating comments that have already been expressed. If you have not provided oral or written comments but wish to receive a formal notice of council's decision on the matter, please contact the clerk's department. The notice will provide further information on appealing the decision. There are two items on tonight's agenda, so maybe you have particularly interest in just one of the two or none of the two or both of them. The county's planner will be asked to present the planning report for each application. City council members may ask questions to the planner. The applicant or representatives of the applicant will then have an opportunity to answer questions or provide their own comments. Prior to proceeding with the first application, does anyone wish to declare a pecuniary interest on any items that are on tonight's agenda? Usually those are submitted in advance as well, and I don't believe there are any, so we'll proceed to the agenda. As I mentioned before, there are two items. Item number one, OP 21-03-8 and ZN 8-21-03. It's an application for official plan amendment and zone change. And what's interesting is the applicant is the city of Woodstock. From the county of Oxford, here's our senior planner to give us the report on the plan amendment and zone change.
Thank you. So the application for official plan amendment and zone change was, as indicated by Councillor Schattenberg, was submitted by the city of Woodstock. And the applicant is proposing, I'll just share my, oops, I'm sharing, yep. Right screen here. Okay. So the application is proposing to redesignate the subject lands, and as council can see, it's just a small portion and it's part of a larger parcel that is considered part of the Brick Pond wetlands as well as Sudsworth Park. And then there's a smaller park that fronts onto Alice Street. And just for clarification, this public notice that we sent out indicated that the subject parcel is, the address is 919 Alice Street, which is accurate because there is a small piece that connects these lands and makes them all one parcel. So the legal address is in fact 919 Alice Street, but it is quite confusing. We did receive a couple letters from neighboring property owners, and they had concerns that potentially Sudsworth Park was going to be impacted, or other areas within this larger parcel. And generally, when I explained to the public that it was just the smaller parcel, they had no concerns with the proposals going through. So anyway, the application will redesignate subject lands from an environmental protection designation to a traditional industrial designation, as well as rezone the lands from a passive use open space zone to a restricted industrial zone. And basically what is happening in this situation is that by redesignating and rezoning these lands, we would be recognizing an existing use that has been longstanding on this property for some time at this point. Just provide a sketch here and you can kind of see closer what's happening on this site. So the application is going to facilitate the use of the subject lands for what they are currently being used for, as well as it'll facilitate the transfer of ownership from city ownership to private ownership, and the lands will be transferred to the property to the immediate west and merged together. So for council's information, City Council passed a resolution authorizing the sale of this parcel, which is 0.25 hectares or 0.63 acres on January 14th, 2021. And so these applications, simply as I already indicated, will facilitate the use as well as the transfer of the lands. The application was circulated to a number of agencies, and the comments that were most noteworthy are comments that were received from the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. They indicated that they were in support of the subject application. However, they wanted the types of uses on this parcel to be limited so that there would be no further, and then also, they wanted a fence to ensure that there's no further encroachment into the actual area that should be protected, which is part of the Brick Pond wetlands. And so the Upper Thames has recommended that open storage be permitted on the site, but not include any permanent structures. And then they indicated what the types of materials could be on the site, so such as topsoil, gravel, concrete. And then they indicated also that they didn't want anything that could be hazardous to the groundwater. And then of course the fence. Further to that, and I didn't make mention of it in this report because it's actually on the lands to the east, but there is in the agreement of purchase and sale between the city and the property owner to the west, who will be assuming the ownership of these lands. There is also an agreement to establish a berm along the most eastern side of this property, and it would actually be on city lands, and so that's why I didn't include it in this report. But that was also a requirement of Upper Thames, and that would ensure that again, no further encroachment would occur, and it would also break down on any sort of impact that this site could potentially have with the natural feature to the west, or to the east. So generally speaking, we are in support of this application. We have recommended that the lands actually be redesignated to a special policy area, which would ensure that, and then also site-specific zoning, which would ensure that the recommendations of the Upper Thames be brought forward, and then that they are permanently on or tied to this site. And so we're recommending a site-specific policy section, and as well as it'll be an M2 special zone, and likely the two parcels would have a split zoning. So this parcel on the east side, the subject lands would be the M2 special, and then the lands that they're being added to would be an M2. And then we would just make sure that we have a special provision that would allow for the two sites to move freely, like for them to move freely across from the one site to the other, as opposed to having a setback from the new zone line. So in light of that, we recommend favorable consideration subject to the site-specific policy recommendation that we are making, as well as the site-specific provisions.
Thanks again for our senior planner, Andrea Hackler from the County of Oxford, for her description of this item on our agenda here tonight. And did want to note, of course, that she mentioned that there are two letters attached to our agenda. We certainly read those as well as far as overall consideration goes for any kind of a plan or project, because we also understand that not everyone wants to sort of appear, whether it be at Zoom or at City Council chamber or just in general. So you can certainly, when it comes up time for you to want to make a comment on anything you see on an agenda for a planning department, by all means, write something. Any member from City Council at this point in time would like to make a comment or have a question for our senior planner on this first agenda item. I know there's been some discussion on this in the past, and as Andrea Hackler had mentioned earlier in the year, there was an item on our City Council agenda pertaining to the sale of that same property. Now we're looking at the official plan amendment and the zone change for that same property. Seeing that there's no comments from members of council at this point, I want to see if there's anybody who is registered to speak in favor of the application that may want to make some comments at this point in time. Again, I do not believe there was anybody registered to speak in favor or against this application, this particular application on the agenda here tonight. Anybody want to speak against the agenda item? And again, as mentioned at the beginning of tonight's meeting, there will be no actual decisions here tonight. The City Council meeting is on Thursday, June the 17th at 1:30 in the afternoon. And both the items on tonight's agenda, including the one we just discussed, will be on the agenda at that point in time for City Council to make a decision on them then. The second item on the agenda is B 21-24-8, A 21-0708. It's an application for both consent and a minor variance. The applicant this time is Oxford Builders, Inc. And the, well, we'll let Senior Planner Andrew Hackler tell us about it, but it's also on Dufferin Street in the city of Woodstock. Go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you. So this application is for a severance and a minor variance, and the applicant is proposing to create a residential lot and then also to retain a lot for similar purposes. And the intent is to establish a single detached dwelling on either side. And I should point out that when I wrote my report, or sorry, when the application was submitted, the applicant had indicated that the single detached dwelling that is on these maps, it would be removed upon approval. However, it's my understanding that the house has since been removed. So that just that point of clarification. So the applicant has also, in order to facilitate the development of the site for the two single detached dwellings, the applicant is also requesting to reduce the minimum lot frontage for both the severed and retained lots from 12 meters to 9.7 meters, which are the minimum lot frontage requirements for the R1 zone. And so council is considering this application tonight because council reviews all severance applications where there's the creation of a new lot. And so they are creating a new residential lot. So this application was circulated to a number of agencies, and one of the most noteworthy agencies that commented were CN, because of the CN railway to the immediate north. They provided a number of different comments, and just before I get into the comments, I should make known that in cases like this where there is CN railway or other sort of noise generating facilities in an area, council has the ability to waive the requirements, or a municipality has the ability to waive the requirements of like a noise and vibration feasibility study, as well as any sort of requirements that could potentially come into play recommended by the agency. And generally in those cases where it would be appropriate to do that is if it's an existing lot of record, if there's existing development that's similar, that would be, say, for example, in this case, it would already be noise sensitive. And so if you're proposing a development that's also noise sensitive and you're not proposing it any closer than what's already in the area, then that would be when it would be appropriate to waive that requirement. So in this case, we did not require a noise impact study. There's an existing dwelling there. The applicant's not proposing to put the dwelling any closer to the railway than what's already in the area. And yeah, we didn't think that it would impact the railway at all, or the normal use of the railway. And so CN did provide comments. They indicated that they felt that it would be appropriate for the owner to provide a fence along the most northern lot line, or the rear lot line adjacent to CN Railway. They also indicated that no habitable building should be closer than 30 meters from the railway. They also required a warning clause be registered on title, so that future owners would know that the railway is there. It seems obvious, but it's important that that's also documented, and then the railway can use that if there's ever any future disagreements or anything like that. Further to that, they requested a berm along the north side. So staff were supportive of the majority of the recommendations. We feel that the proposed dwellings would be approximately 30 meters from the railway. Might be a little bit closer. We talked to the applicant, it might be about 28 meters, which staff were satisfied was not a concern. The one thing that staff were not supportive of was the berm along the rear lot line, and that's simply because there is a sanitary easement along there, and staff felt that a berm would obstruct that easement, and they were not supportive of that recommendation. Further to that, Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, the majority of these properties is within the regulation limit. However, the southern portion of the property, so basically actually where the dwellings are, is not where the existing dwelling on this map exists. That is not within the regulation limits. And so they did request, though, Upper Thames requested that there would be a 15-meter setback requirement, where they recommended that from the lot line, and staff are satisfied that can be accommodated easily. And then Upper Thames indicated that perhaps a Section 28 permit would be required before a building permit could be issued, but that would be determined further on. So generally speaking, staff are satisfied with this application. We feel that it's a form of infill, and it promotes intensification. We feel that both the sites are large enough to provide adequate space for setbacks, parking, and ingress and egress, also drainage and maintenance, as well as I think I already said setbacks, sorry. So in light of the request for the reduced lot frontage as well, based on that same premise, we are satisfied that the sites are adequately wide enough to accommodate setbacks and grading and drainage and maintenance around the buildings. So in light of that, we'd recommend that these applications be given favorable consideration. We've included a number of conditions which address the comments that we received from the various agencies too. Thank you.
We thank Andrea Hackler for her report on this residential proposition for the Dufferin Street area. Any comments from any members of council or questions that they may have for the senior planner on this item? Any questions from council? Maybe I would hate to be the only one with a question, but I will give Andrea a question at this point in time. One thing I'm interested in, with the 64-foot frontage on that property, 174 feet depth for the combined lot, as it sits now, with the R1 zoning there, Andrea, and I don't want to change topics and talk about additional residential units by any stretch of the imagination, but based on the R1 zoning on that property, what is the most that could be built on that lot? In other words, you couldn't build a 4-story, 16 apartment building on there without, of course, getting a zoning change. But what could be built on there with the R1 zoning at the current lot size, 64 by 174 lot?
So actually, under the R1 zoning, you can only construct a single detached dwelling.
So that's why they proposed 2 single detached dwellings.
So if there were any sort of anything beyond a single detached dwelling, they would need a zone change to establish that. So for example, a converted dwelling house or a townhouse or anything like that, you would need a zone change.
Okay. That answers my question. Any other comments or questions from members of council? At this point in time, I'd like to see if there's any delegations that have applied to participate in this meeting here tonight. I don't believe there are any delegations representing the applicant in any way, shape, or form who have registered to speak here tonight. Anyone registered to speak against the proposal, this item on the agenda? Is anyone registered to speak in favor? This time we'll turn it around and say in favor of this application for Dufferin Street in the city of Woodstock. I don't believe anyone had registered to speak against it or in favor of it. And as you've mentioned before, there are no decisions to be made at this evening's planning meeting. Of course, this is a public planning meeting, so if you ever have any comments you'd like to make on something on the agenda for this, you can certainly write a letter to the city and have it included to the city clerk's office, have it included in our agenda as far as the letter would go. And items will be discussed and a decision will be made Thursday afternoon at 1:30. That's Thursday, June the 17th is our next city council meeting. So I want to thank all the members of the council for participating here tonight. And if I could have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Todd Petter and seconded by Jerry Accioni that we adjourn for the evening. Thanks a lot for participating. We'll see you all on Thursday.